Today we check out one of the best but most forgotten TVs of 2024, the Sony Bravia 7. Up next.
I've seen things people wouldn't believe.
Hey, what's up guys? I'm Brian. This is Tech Therapy. Thank you so much for joining me as we check out the Sony Bravia 7. I'm actually circling back to the Bravia 7 as I reviewed it 2 weeks before launch at Value Electronics. Now, why do I think the Bravia 7 was overlooked? I personally feel that it was in the shadow of its more famous sibling, the Sony Bravia 9, as well as the return champ, the Sony A95L QD OLED. I wanted to go back and give it its own time in the sun as it is that good. Without further ado, let's check out the Sony Bravia 7 Mini LED at 75 inches. Thank you so much for watching. All right, guys, let's do it. Sony Bravia 7, 75 inches. We're going to look at it in every light condition possible in this studio. Right now, we're in a very bright room with the sun hitting and the lights on. Going over the design very quickly, you have 4 different stand positions. You can have out wide, flush, narrow, and flush, and then both positions, both narrow and wide, elevated to make room for a sound bar. The legs are much more streamlined now instead of being so chunky where a sound bar can go right over the top if you add the risers. We'll show you the Theater Bar 9 momentarily to show you how it slides right underneath without even touching the stand. The Bravia 7 overall has a very high-end feel, very good build quality as the Theater Bar 9 slides right over the top, not even touching the stand. Theater Bar 9 sounds excellent as well. We'll do a full review on that very soon. Moving into real-world reflection handling, we have a semi-gloss screen with windows and lights above me. See the refraction of the lights? Semi-gloss can look rather dull when the TV is off. However, when content is playing, it looks excellent. The contrast ratio does not take a hit. Semi-gloss, not the best looking finish, especially when the TV is off. However, happy to report that again, it doesn't affect the contrast ratio and the image looks excellent as we move into something a bit more filmic here. You can see how it reflects the light. Again, lights off, lights on, windows open. Moving into our first demo, the light conditions are exactly the same, minus the lights above. The shades are still up. The sun is still hitting the screen. I've also put down what preset that we're in, professional, taking the place of custom for Sony, being its most accurate preset. What I like about professional is it does have a bit more pop and vibrancy than custom had, but it is still very accurate and very true to the filmmaker's intent. For me, the picture presets are very important. You will see all of them throughout this video. The presets are the manufacturer's signature. What are they trying to show you? What are they trying to say? Now, as I mentioned, I reviewed the Bravia 7 2 weeks early at Value Electronics at the beginning of the year. I requested from Sony a larger size Bravia 7. This is their TV as well as the Theater Bar 9. The Bravia 7 is a loaner and is going back to Sony. I also have the Bravia 8 here as well from Value Electronics. I requested the Bravia 7 and even the Bravia 8 as I do feel they're excellent TVs that are being overlooked. Actually, every major manufacturer has some amazing TVs in the mid to high end that are the ones that you're not looking at, as there are superstars in their lineups that many of us focus on and forget about some of the best TVs in the world, and the Bravia 7 is definitely one of those. Now, have you seen in this demo and the demo before with the paint is the local dimming is excellent. Room conditions are the same. We are still in a more accurate preset, not pushing the local dimming too hard. However, we are now going to move into standard and really push the local dimming. You'll see slight haloing, but not much at all. One thing that Sony does rely on more than dimming zones is the algorithm. Most of what you're going to hear throughout this video is processing. The algorithm is part of that. Local dimming is more up to what the cognitive processor and the backlight master drive dictate versus having many more zones that can't be controlled with subpar processing. In this next shot from good friend Jennifer Gala, we're going to start with standard, and then halfway through we'll move into cinema, showing you the flexibility of image. Even with something like standard, very vibrant, very saturated, Sony still keeps an edge on accuracy, still trying to keep the filmmaker's intent. As we move into cinema, you can definitely see the accuracy being honed in a bit more. Still bright, still vibrant, just now more realistic. This is Sony's strength. This is what they rely on. However, in the last few years, they've upped the flexibility of image to where the vivid and standard preset give you more headroom for that brightness and for that saturation as we go through all the presets in this next shot. Now we started with vivid, now moving into standard. What I want to do is go through in real time. We'll do this several times throughout the video with different shots. Now, cinema being much more accurate than standard and vivid. However, standard and vivid still can be as saturated and bright. They still try to maintain some accuracy. Moving into professional, the most accurate of all. Calm is as it sounds. It's not an eco mode. It's more about eye strain and relaxing the viewer. Photo has still been there after many, many years. Game mode is separate. Once you enable the game bar, we'll show you that later. Then we have IMAX Enhanced, and we'll stay with IMAX Enhanced throughout this next demo. Now, I've been reviewing a lot of mini LEDs lately, some even for the second time. What makes the Bravia 7 stand out from everything else is clarity, shadow detail, and most of all, processing. You hear processing all the time. However, the cognitive XR processor is clearly on another level. Now, from some of the other value-based manufacturers where a lot of people will say, well, grab this one, it's cheaper, grab that one. There's something about the processing is one of those things that you get what you pay for, and it is clearly worth it. Shadow detail is amazing on the Bravia 7. As you're seeing this next demo, we are in professional. Haloing and blooming is to a minimum. However, the windows behind the fire dancers is clearly more visible than many other manufacturers, even more than some of the OLEDs. Shadow detail is amazing on the Bravia 7. Again, processing and clarity. You have the peak brightness, you have all of the motion and beauty, but behind you can still see the shadow detail, something a lot of the other TVs lose. Now, as I mentioned, local dimming is excellent, dead on. The weakness of the 65-inch Bravia 7 that I reviewed earlier in the year was viewing angles. It would bloom quite a bit off angle. It's better here with the 75-inch. All of the Bravia 7s have also been updated quite a bit from when I reviewed it. Again, I reviewed it 2 weeks before it launched. Sometimes you need some updates to hone the image quality. Quickly, a very special thanks to the one and only Jennifer Gala and her second channel, the HDR Super Channel. She is responsible for almost all the content you're seeing throughout this video and in the intro. Check out the description below for links to both channels and consider becoming a Patreon to download these same demos for your TV in both Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos. Thank you so much, Jen. Now, throughout the last few clips, you've seen the room grow darker and darker. Now we're here in a completely dark room and we're now in vivid. Even Sony's interpretation of vivid even being very bright and saturated, they still refuse to let it clip. They'll still keep it back just a little bit to not blow out the highlights. Very important to be vivid and accurate. Now moving into professional, yet again, we're gonna see some motion processing in this quick shot with the whale as it moves through the water and as the stingrays move up and down. No motion problems at all. Staying in professional and going through our colors, again, accuracy, very, very beautiful. And professional has the most of the processing in regards to live color, and anything like that disabled looks absolutely amazing. Moving into my favorite are these chubby birds. I love to show you how professional looks, accurate, real life, and then we'll go through the presets and show you how much this image can change. The director's intent. Also, the XR processor has a focal aspect to it, where the processor does say, what is this a picture of? And what I mean by that is it focuses on what is in the image. It's a bird. It'll focus more on what you see in front of you and then let the background kind of blur a little bit, giving you that three-dimensionality. This is something that Sony does very different than other manufacturers. You'll see that when I compare the Bravia 7 to the Samsung QN90D and how each manufacturer chooses to interpret an image. Sony's focal point keeps the subject in view and creates, as you see here, a more three-dimensional image. As I mentioned earlier in the video, the Bravia 7 has been overshadowed by its more famous sibling, the Bravia 9. However, you are getting nearly the same picture quality, same processing at a fraction of the cost, as well as there being more sizes available. You have a 55, 65, 75, and 85, where you might be eyeing a Bravia 9 at a certain size, say 75. I'd rather see you get a Bravia 7 at 85. There's also been some confusion of what the Bravia 7 is replacing. It's actually replacing last year's X93L, which was also excellent. However, the Bravia 7 is a big upgrade, where the X93 did not have the cognitive processor. As good as it was, the Bravia 7 is an automatic upgrade just by having that processor in better picture quality. Now, as you can tell, the local dimming is excellent in a completely dark room. We are in standard, so we are in a very bright and vibrant preset. We're going to show you off angle momentarily to show you where that does shift. Getting up, we are not just off angle, we are above the TV, and there's where you can see a bit of haloing there. Still not bad, but where the Bravia 7 does do better than the Bravia 9, like the X93 before it, is better shadow detail. There are times where the Bravia 9's local dimming can be aggressive and will crush some shadow detail. The Bravia 7 retains that, and side by side, at times, the Bravia 7 can look even brighter due to the less aggressive local dimming. Now, why that is very important is because you can have manufacturers offer zones upon zones, but without the processing to control them, without the algorithm to keep it in check, it will simply crush detail or get confused and bloom erratically. We've seen that with several mini LEDs this year. With the cognitive processor, it's about upscaling, it's about detail, it's about clarity. It's one of the best processors in the business, and that is clearly what you are paying for. So know that going in. If you pay a bit more, this is what you're getting. Clear, more concise image, finer detail, shadow detail. Now looking back at our more filmic aggressive aspect ratio, we're gonna go from professional, again, back into something a bit more punchy, checking the blooming or again, local dimming. You say the bars are still very dark. Again, moving up and over, and you can see where the haloing will start. And again, it's not bad, but it's there in comparison to, say, the Bravia 9. There it is. And that is accurate to what I see in person, but you have to get pretty off angle and being above the TV looking down. Now with something colorful on screen, what I'm looking for here off angle is color shift, and that is not really the problem. The colors don't shift much here. So it really is the local dimming that gets affected, being a little bit too off angle. Obviously, the larger the TV, the less this matters. I didn't find it to be a problem from the 75-inch. Now looking at the new layout in the UI, this is what you are also paying for. You may say go get last year's TVs, X95, etc. However, these are new. They started with the A95L. This is worth the price difference than last year's models to have everything laid out and tuned differently. Especially something like the Ambient Optimization Pro, which is further improving last year's ambient mode. You'll see as I turn the lights off, watch the image change. It doesn't change it in terms of eye strain, it's more about making it more pleasing. As we turn the lights off, the image became more vibrant. It didn't get dark. It's not an eco mode. This is something I use on all of my modern Sony TVs. It's better this year than it was even on last year's A80L, which is my personal TV. You'll see it change again when the lights go on, making it now more accurate. Awesome feature. Moving into gaming, Sony has made great strides with gaming. They added a game bar a few years ago. Now we have 3 different picture presets, something that Sony was severely lacking prior to this new UI. Again, worth the price difference to have these 3 different presets. You have standard, you have RTS, which you'll see momentarily, and then you have FPS. I'll show you those each as we go through. Sony has probably the best looking game mode in the business. The challenge wasn't ever having a bad looking game mode. The challenge was flexibility of image. The game mode just was what it was. If you loved it, you were great. If you wanted to change it, you couldn't change it much. They have gotten better with that. Still not perfect, as you do have the 3 picture presets that do look different from one another. Now, sadly, we're still limited to 2 HDMI 2.1 ports capable of 4K 120. Many other mini LED manufacturers have moved to 144. However, I'd argue that that comes at the cost of clarity. They can be very muddy at times if they're mini LEDs. I'd rather have a clear, concise 4K 120 over 144. Now going through the game bar different presets, I want to focus on motion blur reduction. I'd like to see that improve. To me, there's still way too much flicker for me to find it useful. The black equalizer, also a cool feature. However, I'd like to see it, instead of just getting brighter, let me go darker. Let me control that image and deepen that image without losing the highlights. That way we can control poor HDR that we see in so many games and black level rays. The ability to deepen the blacks without losing detail and also without losing HDR impact is so important. I wish Sony would implement something like that. Now, while I mentioned that Sony has one of the best looking game modes in the business, it's definitely one of the clearest as well. Its ability to change the image, the flexibility of image just isn't there. Things like gradation preferred, brightness preferred in regards to tone mapping doesn't change the image much. Even live color has less impact. The local dimming is very impactful. But Sony, please give me back some of these controls. Bring back black adjust, something that I can deepen the image where needed. Tone mapping should be more effective. Live color more effective, as almost or nearly as almost as they are in the other presets. Give me that for my game mode, perhaps at a little bit more input lag, but I need a little bit more controls over the image. One thing that they have that no one else has is reality creation. Reality creation has been around forever, and it's a love or hate proposition. It can actually add sharpening to any game regardless of resolution, and it does an amazing job here. I'll show you some of the foliage and leaves. You'll see it toggled at max on and off. However, in years past, it would add a lot of noise. Now that the processing has improved, you can actually max it out, and it doesn't hurt the image that much. The noise and the aliasing isn't there. It does clean it up. toggle it to halfway, and it is something that I definitely use in my games on both PC and console. Again, this is a feature that none of the other manufacturers have, that only Sony has, and it's something definitely worth checking out and playing with. The processing is so much better. This is definitely a feature I recommend using. Now, while the tone mapping is not as flexible in terms of changing the image, it also doesn't clip. The detail is there. Now, for Sony, also, while we're still talking about gaming, it's also the best up conversion out there as far as low bitrate content. The XR processor is clearly next level and also worth it if you're looking at anything below 1080p. Everything looks good, everything looks natural. But in a game like Dirt 5, where a lot of times the skybox will clip or it'll be too faded, looks amazing here. Very deep, very clear. Now, my go-to game is Returnal for local dimming. As you can see, the HUD has no blooming at all. It also is amazing at shadow detail and up conversion, as Returnal is only 1080p. So again, showing the processing at work. The XR clear processing isn't even available in gaming, but the processing is still the best in the business. Again, no haloing, shadow detail is there, and the specular highlights really pop. Gorgeous game, tough game to showcase, as it can be very muddy. Here it's very clear. And again, you look at the heads-up display, nothing in terms of blooming. Now that wraps it up for gaming. In closing, the Bravia 7 is definitely an easy recommend. Best processing in the business, one of the best mini LEDs out there, and the TV that many of you are overlooking. I'd rather see you get a larger Bravia 7 than a Bravia 9. This TV is definitely worth checking out this time of year, as the prices have fallen. You'll see it go against the Samsung QN90D next week, but definitely check out the Bravia 7. Give it a look. It is a gorgeous TV, but that processing, that up conversion, that detail, that shadow detail, HDR impact, all here. I'm Brian. This is Tech Therapy. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing. Love you guys. Have a great day. Have a great night. Take care.
It's better to burn out than to fade away. There can be only one.